The Culling games is probably the most divisive arc in the Jujutsu Kaisen fandom. It's packed to the brim with some highs, lows, and plot points that really feel underused. But regardless of your opinions on the Culling games story, it did give us some of the most beloved characters and curse techniques in the entire series, along with some of the weirdest characters and their equally as weird curse techniques. Gege really was just putting anything to paper. So with Season 3 coming to an end and us having explored 2 of the 4, well, actually 5 colonies we'll see in the series, let's talk about the participants of the Culling games. Now, before we properly start talking about the cast, I just wanted to say thank you for all the support and kind words on the previous video. It meant a lot, especially considering how sporadic my uploads are. This was supposed to come out actually during part 1, as you can tell. Not doing a great job. But enough of that. Let's talk about the Culling games. So, obvious spoiler warning ahead, we'll be going in order of when we meet the characters with a few exceptions. So starting out, we have Yuji and Megumi. Okay, so obviously you know who Yuji and Megumi are. I don't think I need to explain that. But both of them have gone through some changes since we last saw them at the end of Shibuya. Or for Megumi, yeah. Aside from Yuji's newly acquired depression, his fight with Maito has completely warped his worldview, now believing his only purpose in life is to be a tool, a cog in the Jujutsu machine. But despite him making this declaration to Hakari, Yuji still tries to act like his old self. Now, it cannot be understated how much of a walking bomb Yuji is, with 15 of Sukuna's fingers. Don't worry about that asterisk. His physical strength is still no joke, and amped even further by his massive pool of cursed energy. But the biggest difference is his previously mentioned shift in mentality, and his unshakable will. But he, still doesn't have a curse technique. I mean, I guess you can count Divergent Fist, but Alright, I'm gonna do something very risky, and actually defend Megumi a bit. So please direct any hate to someone who cares. I don't think it's an understatement to say Megumi's life has gone to shit. Sumiki has been forced to participate in the Culling games, Gojo has been sealed, and now he's the head of the Zenin clan. All equally horrible things. But he somehow managed to keep a clear head and prepare himself to kill to make sure that Sumiki gets to go free. And kudos to him, he nearly goes 100 chapters without trying to summon Mahoraga. Granted, he's not in a lot of those chapters, but still. And speaking of the 10 Shadows, Megumi has drastically improved since, with him perfecting his ability to enter the shadows, with him previously only using it as storage. And the anime does an amazing job showcasing this, with him going all Solid Snake on Hakari's guards. That's not even mentioning that he has an arsenal of Shikigami, which are extremely powerful as long as you're not fighting some of the strongest characters in the series. But of course, upon entering the colony, our dynamic duo is split up, leading them both to start their own fights. Starting with Yuji's side, we have Rin Amai, one of the many new sorcerers created by Kenjaku, and someone Yuji's actually met before. While it was only in passing, Yuji got into a fight with the group of bullies that Rin would hang around with. But now in the Culling games, he's gone from bully to bullied, as 2 stronger sorcerers forced him to do their dirty work, helping them pick off new players. That was until Yuji arrived, giving him the chance to quickly change sides, as he's not exactly a fighter. His curse technique is sugar manipulation. It basically allows him to transform his blood sugar into a physical form, or even infuse it into somebody else. Yeah, it's not exactly limitless, but I'm sure somebody can find a use for him. Hanyu and Haba are the aforementioned bullies. They also had their curse technique awakened by Kenjaku, and decided to participate in the Culling games. Well, obviously, or they wouldn't be on this list. And I guess participate is kind of a strong word, as by the time we meet them, they've bullied Amai into helping them target rookies to farm points. The only other fight we know they took part in was Haba against Higuruma, but we'll get to him. Now, thankfully, I don't have to spend too much time talking about their curse techniques. Hanyu's allows her to transform her hair into a jet, and Haba's allows him to transform his into a helicopter. Now, we don't actually know exactly how strong either of these are because it's physical damage up against Yuji, which never goes well. But judging from the environmental damage we see them do, we can guess they're probably a bit stronger than your average sorcerer. Luckily, Megumi doesn't have it nearly as bad as Yuji, encountering Remy. She's another new gen sorcerer, and that pretty face is really all she has going for her. So she uses it to manipulate people. But of course that doesn't work on Megumi. She's always relied on others to solve her problems. Before becoming a sorcerer, she would use her charms to convince men to take care of her. And she definitely kept that mindset entering the Culling games, which led her to misplacing her trust in Reggie Star. Oh yeah, her curse technique is that her hair turns into a scorpion stinger. It doesn't do anything. Now back to our first incarnated sorcerer. And as such, he treats the Culling games as
Just that, a game. He's an arrogant, overconfident prick who enjoys playing with his victims, even treating his allies as tools, using Remy as a honeypot to lure in sorcerers, giving them the opportunity to work for him or die. But it is for a greater purpose, as Reggie is one of the few people who figure out that there's more going on with the Culling games and the colonies than Kenjaku lets on. So he started gathering allies. But whatever greater plan he had would be cut short after his encounter with Megumi. Although, during his short screen time, he gives us what I believe to be one of the most important lines in the series. A sorcerer is nothing but a con artist. And just because he got beat by Megumi doesn't mean that he's a pushover, as he actually has one of the most interesting and versatile techniques in the series, contractual recreation, which by burning a contract such as a receipt, he can recreate its contents, regardless if it's an object or a service. And the items summoned by this technique act similar to Shikigami, following any order given. He also introduces us to the ancient anti-domain technique, Hollow Wicker Basket, a prototype of the new shadow style that we see the Kyoto students use. And let's not forget, as a past sorcerer, he has a lot more experience fighting other sorcerers compared to modern day sorcerers. So he is actually quite a threat. Now that we've talked about the man himself, let's quickly run through the rest of Reggie's group. Starting with the one we know the least about, we have Chizuru Hari. He's loyal to Reggie and quite durable. I'd love to say something about his curse technique, but we literally know nothing about it. All we see is his hands turn into these claws before he gets bodied by Megumi. Really a tragic fate. At least I have a little more to talk about with the last member of the group, Iori Hazunoki, another incarnated sorcerer. He's cruel and quick to anger, so it's just his luck he gets put up against the comic relief character. No, I don't mean Megumi. Like Chizuru, he's loyal to Reggie, but Hazunoki does seem to be a bit higher in the pecking order. It could be because he's also an incarnated sorcerer, or the more likely option, because of how strong his curse technique is. Explosive Body, which allows him to turn any part of his body into a bomb. This combined with his ability to use reverse curse technique should put him pretty high on the power rankings, but there is one thing to consider. Megumi did manage to take one of these explosions to the face with only minor injuries, so the explosions aren't exactly comparable to say a stick of dynamite. Still, there's few who could take as many hits from it as Fumihiko Takaba. He's another member of the new Sorcerers Club, and he's a comedian, just not a successful one. Ever since he was a kid, he wanted to be a comedian, to connect with other people. But manzai, the most popular form of stand-up comedy in Japan, requires a partner. And no matter how hard he tried, he could never find a partner who'd take comedy as seriously as him. So eventually, he stopped taking it so seriously, and just accepted any laughs he could get, as long as he found it funny. And that is the basis of his curse technique, comedian. One of the strongest curse techniques in the series, only beaten out by maybe Maru's, but that's way off in the future. It basically allows Takaba to make anything he finds funny reality. The only condition is that Takaba must have absolute confidence in his abilities as a comedian. He's also the best character because he gave us this scene in the anime and he gave us this ad for the manga volume he's on the cover of. Hiromi Higuruma is another newly awakened sorcerer, but before that he was a defense attorney who was well known for taking on nearly impossible cases, not out of some need to protect the weak, but simply because he refused to avert his eyes from the injustice happening in front of him. He believed that everybody deserved a fair trial, regardless of the crime they may have committed. But after his recently acquitted client was found guilty on retrial, he lost his faith in the justice system and snapped, killing the judge and prosecutor of that case, awakening his curse technique and joining the Culling games, where he decided to kick back, relax, and take a nice long bath. His curse technique, Judge Man, is a Shikigami that proceeds over the trials inside his domain, death sentencing, and compared to the other domains we've seen in the series up to this point, it's rather unique, as inside the domain all acts of violence are prohibited, and any attempts will result in being teleported back to your podium. Then Higuruma's target is put on trial for a past crime they've committed, randomly picked by Judge Man, who learns everything about the target the second they're pulled into the domain. But that doesn't give Higuruma an advantage, as the only thing he receives from Judge Man is a single piece of evidence to use as the prosecution. The evidence won't be conclusive, but the defendant doesn't get to see it until the prosecution's statement. Now, while it may seem weighed against the defendant, they don't actually need to prove that they're innocent, just that they're not guilty, which is easier said than done, I know. But if you are declared innocent, you're assumedly released from the domain. I say assumedly because we've never actually seen that happen in the series. On the other side, we've seen two types of guilty outcomes. The first is when they are proven guilty of a normal crime. They are subject to Judge Man's confiscation, which prevents the guilty target from using their curse technique for a short time. But if the target has no curse technique, like Yuji, they lose the ability to control their cursed energy. Or if they're in possession of something like a cursed tool, then that'll be confiscated instead. The second is when they are found guilty of a more heinous crime. Judge Man will give them the death penalty, transforming Higuruma's gavel into the executioner's sword, a blade that will instantly kill whoever it touches. The blade also isn't connected to Higuruma, as he can toss it to somebody else for them to use instead. should the situation arise. But on a lighter note, Hana Kurisu, or Angel, is another incarnated sorcerer. Well, kind of. Unlike the other ancient sorcerers who revived, Angel didn't overwrite the consciousness of the body she was revived into, like, say, Reggie did. Instead, Angel allowed Hana to keep control of her body, and even use Angel's powers. Which is good, because Angel herself is kinda difficult to work with. In exchange for her powers, Hana is to eliminate as many incarnated players as she can. But there is one that is more important than the rest. The disgraced one. I'm sure you can figure out who that is. Anyways, we have another extremely powerful technique on our hands, at least in concept. Technique Extinguishment. It does exactly what you'd imagine it does. It nullifies any and all curse techniques, objects, or barriers that it hits. The technique itself is usually applied through Jacob's Ladder, an attack that unleashes a massive pillar of light on the target. But the real question we need to ask about Hana is, what is up with that sweater she's wearing? And with that, we're finished with the Tokyo colony, at least for now. Next up is the Sendai colony, the one Yuta is headed to, and the home to the four-way deadlock. But before we talk about them, let's discuss the man who broke it, Yuta Okotsu.
And man, what training was Miguel putting this boy through in Africa? Because his performance in Sendai needs to be studied.
Though I guess he can't really take all the credit, as Yuta has had quite the personality shift over the last year. No longer is he the timid, self-conscious novice from zero. We see him making bold moves like stepping into the four-way deadlock, fighting the colony's four strongest sorcerers back to back to back, and managing to keep the upper hand for the majority of the fights. And just to answer the very obvious question, yes, I am a Yuta fan. But to be honest, he really would have had no excuse if he lost these fights, because Gige really gave him everything. Because outside of just being extremely talented, he has Rika, who may be a shell of her former self. That doesn't change the fact that she is still one of the strongest curses in existence. That carries around weapons for him, allows him to copy other people's techniques, acts as a backup reserve of cursed energy for his already insane pool of cursed energy, plus reverse curse technique, and a domain expansion. So whoever ran to Yuta first was always screwed. And that misfortune would fall on Dhruv Lokdawala, who dies in his second panel. Again, he's another incarnated sorcerer, but he is a little bit more special than the rest, being the only sorcerer who is stated to be on their second incarnation. The only thing we know about his past is that he made a name for himself during the Civil War of Wa. But the really sad thing about his character is that his curse technique lasts longer than he does, with it being one of the many copied by Yuta. He creates a small bat-like Shikigami that circles around its target, creating a barrier. If anyone attempts to exit said barrier, they are riddled with slashes. Simple in concept, but it just happens to be the perfect counter to Kuroushi, or as fans probably better know him as right now, Big Rushi. A cursed spirit Kenjaku released to participate in the Culling games, and he's a cockroach. Or she? And I would say there's not much to talk about here, but since their appearance in the anime, Big Rushi has quickly become a fan favorite for their love of iron and being a fourth wheel. Now, being a cockroach cursed spirit, they can use their cursed energy to create man-eating cockroaches through parthenogenesis. And that right there is what makes them so deadly, as they can just straight up make themselves a backup body. And then once the original body is destroyed, the cursed energy is transferred to their new one. But that swarm of cockroaches is a lot more threatening than their actual technique, Earth Insect Trance, which creates these small fly-like insects holding a sack of strange liquid. And once they are killed, the liquid is sprayed in the target's eyes, blinding them. And now we have the last and most interesting thing in Kuroushi's arsenal, the life-festering sword. A cursed tool with 6 barrels on the front of the blade that fire cursed insect eggs into whomever it hits. And then that unlucky son of a bitch will have insects bursting out of their skin. The blade also seems to be a part of Kuroushi to some extent, as when Kuroushi V2 shows up, they also have the blade. Then again, they could have just gone and picked it back up. I don't know. But after their French kiss with Yuta, we meet Takako Uro, another incarnated sorcerer whose past we actually know a lot about. In her previous life, she was the captain of the Sun, Moon, and Star Squads, a group of assassins under the Fujiwara clan. But after she had outlived her usefulness, they executed her. Hence why she's not exactly a fan of them, or Yuta, who she immediately clocks as a descendant. And I should just take this moment to clarify, we don't know for certain that she is correct about this. Yuta mentions it to Gojo later, and he kind of just shrugs and says, it's possible, so take that as you will. So that plus her prideful nature means she's not exactly the reasonable type. But at least she's got a cool curse technique, Sky Manipulation. It allows her to manipulate the space around her as if it was a solid surface, being able to pull on it like a sheet and distort it. She can even make clothes out of it and somehow fly.
And in a fight, it can be used to easily dodge attacks by simply bending them around her. Or she can even use it offensively by shattering the space her opponent occupies, unleashing a powerful shockwave, or as she calls it, Thin Ice Breaker. But this is just the beginning, as she also possesses a domain expansion. Except, we never see it. So, actually, this is it. Ryu Ishigori is the last member of our 4-way deadlock, and another member of the Oldies Club. He's the exact type of person the Culling games are made to take advantage of. While he's not somebody who died with regrets, he never fought anyone who could satisfy him, so I guess it's no surprise that he swept his way through the colony, not really giving a second thought. Similar to Uro, though he is a lot more cool and collected. At least most of the time. As when he finally got the fight he was looking for, you can bet he went all out and enjoyed himself. Now that Pompadour isn't just for style, it's actually how he fights, unleashing high blasts of cursed energy from it, and it is a serious upgrade from what he was rocking 400 years ago. He's noted to be the only sorcerer capable of releasing the same amount of power regardless if it's his curse technique or not, and while he can fire off blasts in a bunch of different beams, he prefers the good old everything in front of me granite blast. And that's all we've seen because yet again we don't get to see his goddamn domain expansion. But there is still one more fighter left in the Sendai colony that managed to go undercover till now. I am of course talking about Miwa. She can't use swords anymore. That's it. Now heading to the Tokyo 2 colony. We've only really just met Hakari this season, so I don't know if there's much I can say outside of his curse technique, but here I go anyways. Kinji Hakari is the last of the Jujutsu High students that we meet, due to him being suspended back during the Night Parade of 100 Demons, which was nearly a year ago by the time we meet him, so I think he's technically a dropout. Regardless, during that time he created his very own fight club, which is his whole reason for helping out, so he can make his very illegal fight club a legal one. But that's just what he says. We all know he's actually a big softie. Aww. And he is a huge help, because however you power scales want to take Yuta's statement on Hakari, there is no denying that he is incredibly strong, with his curse energy alone being described as having a type of edge to it. But his real power comes from his curse technique, Private Pure Love Train, which is based on a pachinko machine inspired by a romance manga. And it is a lot, and I will do my best to explain it, and if I get anything wrong, I'm sure somebody will point it out in the comments. Now while the main part of his technique is his domain, he can also summon his visual effect indicators outside it. His domain, Idle Death Gamble, is a pachinko-inspired domain, which I'm sure Yuji would love. When activated, this manga panel is injected directly into your brain. That is no joke. The sure hit effect of his domain is all this information. But to simplify it a bit, it's kind of level-based. When entering his domain, it appears as this kind of white space with a few ticket scanners. And by using his visual effect indicators, he's able to roll slots, and depending on the characters rolled, a different scenario will play out, each with their own chances of success. On a failure, they return to the beginning, but on a jackpot, for the next 4 minutes and 11 seconds, the exact length of Private Pure Love Train's theme song, Hakari will have an unlimited supply of cursed energy running through his body, which lets him reflexively perform reverse curse technique, making him practically unkillable. But it's what comes next that makes him so strong. You see, Private Pure Love Train is a special type pachinko machine, meaning after hitting a jackpot, it enters probability shift, giving him a higher chance of rolling well. And his domain is filled with random effects to boost his luck, from the color of his visual effect indicators to certain backgrounds that can appear. And if he's in fever, he can even re-roll. But I think that's everything. If I missed something, feel free to drop it in the comments. I am more than willing to accept some criticism, unlike Hakari's first opponent, Charles Bernard, an aspiring French mangaka, which is admirable. He even managed to get a meeting with a publisher, but that's where things kinda go bad for him. You see, he's eccentric, overconfident, and absolutely cannot take criticism, which leads to him lashing out, completely ruining his chances. And to make things even worse, after the Shibuya incident, no one's even publishing manga, leaving him quite distraught. Luckily for him, he got the good old Kenny touch, letting him explore his love of manga through his curse technique. His G War Staff, a cursed tool shaped like a pen that he can use his technique through. By cutting someone and absorbing their blood into the staff, he can create the first part of his technique, the ink, which he can use to mark his target with a manga panel, allowing him to peer into their future by one panel. And the more blood he absorbs, the further into the future he can see. Since I talked about Hakari, I guess I should talk about Panda in the Culling games. Can I, not? He's been through enough. It's weird to say, but Panda is probably the most normal out of the Tokyo students, but that is definitely not how the higher-ups see him. He is a perfected weapon, a self-sustaining cursed corpse.
And because Yaga refused to reveal how Panda was created, he was killed. But still, Panda refused to give up. He helped recruit Hakari and even joined the Culling games, giving us the perfect opportunity to see what he can do when he goes all out. As an abrupt mutated cursed corpse, Panda has 3 cores inside his body, basically souls. And he can change between these cores to alter his body, like we saw all the way back in Season 1. We have Panda's own core, which is his more normal, balanced form, his brother's core, or his gorilla mode, which is more power focused but drains cursed energy fast, and his third and final form is his sister, or Triceratops mode, which Panda claims no one has seen, because his sister destroys anyone who looks at it. But we also haven't seen it, thanks to Hajime Kashimo, the next member of the Oldies Club. In his past life, he ran into a similar situation to Ryu, not surprising since they were of the same era. He fought many strong sorcerers and cursed spirits, but there was no one who could match his strength. And with his time running out, he agreed to Kenjaku's plan, as long as it would let him fight Sukuna. And when the time came for the Culling games, Kashimo was left disappointed. He fought and killed over 40 players, and none of them were a challenge, so he focused his attention back on Sukuna, leading him into conflict with Panda and Hakari, the latter of the two actually managing to challenge him, and so he agreed to help them in exchange for a fight with Sukuna. And while we don't get to see his curse technique until the arc after the Culling games, his fight with Hakari shows us that he doesn't really need it. You see, Kashimo has a unique form of cursed energy. While someone like Hakari is said to have rough cursed energy, Kashimo's is literally electricity, making his cursed energy reinforced punches pack even more of a punch. And if he can't reach you, he'll just fire a bolt of lightning at you. And since he does this by manipulating positive and negative charges, it can't miss. He also doesn't even need to charge the electricity himself, as his Nyoi staff can do it for him. And before I move on, let me just drop this reminder for people because they often seem to forget that Kashimo can use Hollow Wicker Basket, giving him an anti-domain technique. Now, next colony is... Wait. I also forgot, Momo's here too. She doesn't actually do any fighting, both her and Miwa just act as kind of messengers. She has her broom though. Anyways, the last major colony we visit is Sakurajima, which the newly awakened Maki Zenin enters alongside Kamo, but we'll get to him in a minute. First, let's talk about Maki. What is there to say about Maki? Not much, actually. You'd think massacring your entire clan would change you, but it doesn't really have an effect on Maki's personality. She's just kind of the same as she was before the massacre, though she has picked up on Toji's habit of aura farming. But with Mai gone, Maki's heavenly restriction has reached its full power. Or at least it should have? But there's still something holding her back. Herself. She became satisfied with just being like everybody else, not using the gifts her new body provided her. And it wasn't until she did about 1,000 sumo matches, just wait, we'll get to that she realized this herself, finally reaching the same level as Toji Fushiguro. And it shouldn't be underestimated what she's capable of now, as we literally see her dodge attacks mid-air. By, and I'm not kidding, utilizing surfaces created by different temperatures and air densities. But what truly makes her deadly to even high-level sorcerers is the fact that she is invisible. I mean, we saw this in the Gojo and Toji fight, but even to a greater extent, she can't be trapped inside the barrier of a domain. And even if she chose to enter it, she'd be unaffected by the domain's sure-hit effect. Oh, that lasted a bit longer than a minute. Kamo is one of the characters whose suffering goes understated, because, well, just look at the characters around him. All he ever wanted was to gain enough power to build a place where his mother could be happy. So he followed the orders of the corrupt higher-ups, he attempted to make allies with members of the 3 big clans. He basically did anything he could to gain influence. But when he finally tried to reconnect with his mother after all this time, he found out that she'd moved on and started a new family. But then if things weren't bad enough, upon returning to the Kamo clan, he found out that it had been taken over by Kenjaku, the original Narutoshi Kamo, who couldn't even be bothered to kill him. So with nothing left and nowhere to go, he agrees to help the rest of the Jujutsu High students out. So he teamed up with Maki and they entered the Sakurajima colony. Discussing Kamo's technique is a bit depressing, because for all intents and purposes, he's just a worse Choso. Obviously, they have the exact same technique, but Choso just has so many more benefits than Kamo does. Because unlike Choso, who can use his cursed energy to make blood, Kamo has to rely on his own and the limited supply of blood bags he carries around. Though he did manage to put up a pretty good defense against our next participant, Naoya Zenin, who makes his not-so-grand return to the series. How, you may ask? Well, it's very simple. Maki didn't finish the job, instead letting her mother do the killing. But importantly, she is not a sorcerer, or at least not a competent one. You see, when killing a sorcerer of any kind, there is one very important thing to remember. Kill them using cursed energy. Otherwise, the sorcerer's hatred and lingering cursed energy could cause him to become a vengeful cursed spirit. And while Maki and Kamo manage to take him down pretty quickly, he becomes a cursed womb, evolving into an even stronger form that grants him flight and enhanced speed, now allowing him to accelerate up to Mach 3. And on top of all that, he still has his projection sorcery, though now his preferred way of attack is simply ramming into things in his new acceleration mode, which thanks to a binding vow makes him extremely durable. And of course, for somebody who views themselves to be on the same level as Toji and Gojo, he has a domain expansion, Time Cell Moon Palace. Just ignore the fact that it looks like a uterus, and focus on how insane this domain actually is. Because while inside, now you can use projection sorcery down to a cellular level. That combined with its sure hit effect makes it practically a death sentence for anybody who doesn't have an anti-domain technique. Though I guess that's kind of the same for most domains actually. So let's not give him too much credit. Now, Maki and Kamo aren't the only ones inside the Sakurajima colony, as two other incarnated sorcerers show up to their fight with Naoya. The first being the swordsman Hagane Daido, who actually isn't a sorcerer. Nothing is really known about his past except for his love of katanas and just how deadly he is with them, managing to cut Naoya without even being able to perceive him. And it's thanks to his and our next sorcerer's advice that Maki was able to properly awaken to her strength and fight Naoya. Now, our aforementioned next sorcerer is Rokujushi Mio, and he actually is a proper sorcerer this time, who also happens to have a rather unique domain, as it has no technique really associated with it. It just creates a sumo ring. But before the barrier can even form, the challenger must agree to the match. But once inside the domain, time actually moves a lot slower, allowing for over 1,000 sumo matches to happen in less than a minute. So it's not exactly some big, flashy, power scaly technique. After being incarnated, he set out for Tokyo to find some sumo wrestlers, only to head in the complete opposite direction and end up in Sakurajima. And just in time too, might I add, as it was his challenge that allowed Maki to clear her mind, allowed her to understand the differences between her and Toji. And because of their help, Mio and Daido are the only incarnated sorcerers we know were allowed to live after the end of the series. For however long though, who knows. Now let's take a moment to swing back around to the original Tokyo colony and talk about a couple hundred new sorcerers that were added. The United States military. No, I am not kidding. We know they arrived in the colony in order to kidnap sorcerers, to experiment on them, as Kenjaku had previously pitched to their president, though we only know of two sorcerers who actually fell victim to them, Remy, who was captured, and Haba, who was killed. They attempted to kidnap our main party, and even Hazanoki, but they were seriously outmatched. We don't know the fate of all the soldiers, but many were most likely killed by cursed spirits. And lastly, we have the Lake Gosho colony, where we meet this unnamed sorcerer with no known technique, leaving us with just Kenjaku, the man, the woman, the brain behind the Culling games. He's lived for centuries thanks to his curse technique, brain transplant, that allows him to take over another person's body, regardless of whether they're alive or not, like we saw with Geto. And aside from him, we've only seen 3 other bodies Kenny's taken. An unknown sorcerer from 400 years ago. This was the body he used to make all those binding vows with past sorcerers like Kashimo. Noritoshi Kamo, which he used to make the Curse Womb death paintings. And finally, Kaori Itadori, which he used to make Yuji. But the most valuable thing Kenny got from Kaori wasn't her womb, it was her curse technique, anti-gravity system, which allows him to intensify the gravitational pull around himself, which ends up saving his life. But that's enough about his techniques, and his grand plan was already revealed by Tengen. The Culling games are simply a method to collect curse energy to fuel the merger. So after over a month of fighting, Kenny himself heads in to clean up some of the leftovers, running into Hazanoki and Takaba. But that's going a bit too far into spoiler territory for any anime onlys who decided to keep watching. The Culling games really are an interesting part of the story, and I'm glad the anime reception so far has been positive, because as someone who was reading weekly at the time, it was very hit or miss. Anyways, do the YouTube stuff, and I'll see ya when I see ya.